Pirate Ninjas, credits, and Malcolms. The Google defines the unit as an individual thing or person regarded as single and complete, but can also form an individual component of a larger or more complex whole, and quantity chosen as standard in terms of which whether other quantities may be expressed. And these are useful because they make what could be more difficult to understand simpler, while rarely losing the meaning of what they're trying to simplify. When creating a fictional world, authors must think of their audience and the reader who doesn't know what this world actually is. The author has to explain or elaborate on what the world that everything takes place in. What is that? What's happening? In a science fiction setting, some of these terms can be hand waves, just being what we need in science fiction to have scaffolding for the suspension of disbelief of the audience. Speaking of something that is relatively complex, becoming simpler for reader to understand, The Martian by Andy Weir does create a new unit for power. In the book, while explaining the math that is being done to complete the mission of staying alive while being stranded on Mars, Mark Watney, the protagonist, gets tired of writing and saying the words kilowatt hours per soul, and instead uses the term pirate ninjas to refer to the same thing. To explain what the kilowatt per hour soul means and what the pirate ninja refers to, it's essentially just the amount of power used with the machines to keep Mark alive. The big three being just the oxygenator, the water reclaimer, and the atmospheric regulator. And in this book and in the movie, it is shown that power and the calculations for keeping and rationing out the power that he has in generating more is very important, as shown in the heating problems clip.
If I use the heater, I will burn through half my battery every day. If I do not use my heater, I will be slowly killed by the laws of thermodynamics.
He could say kilowatts per hour soul, but it's just so much more interesting to say pirate ninjas, and it's these small things that make The Martian so great. And another good example of how units are used in a science fiction setting is in another book that became a movie, Ready Player One, by Ernest Cline. As Ricardo has said,
Ready Player One? It's a good book.
The unit that they use in the movie and the book of Ready Player One is also a form of unit. It's a currency of the virtual reality world called the Oasis. As I was figuring how to make this video, I couldn't really find evidence for the explanation of the units in these films. I think this is because of the fact that they're trying to pack in the experience of a book into just a 2-hour thing on a screen with action to keep the audience engaged. They don't really have screen time to explain these small units of the pirate ninjas and or the credits, or the Malcolms, which we'll get to later. In Ready Player One, which the book's called credits, and the films called them coins for some reason, and these are shown to have an effect on characters in multiple scenes.
Dude, you won the key and got 100,000 coins?
As soon as I took the key, all the coins just appeared in my account.
I wish that there was just more time for the application of how the world works in these science fiction films, based off of books, but it shows how much he is advancing through this world and through the economic ladder, and without knowing really how much the credit is worth, no one really understands how actually impactful the credit is and how much he can do having this currency in the virtual reality world. As even in the book it says that the Oasis credit was the coin of the realm, and in these dark times it was one of the world's most stable currencies, valued higher than the dollar, pound, euro, or yen. So currency is the unit, and the way that they use the unit of currency in Ready Player One is just a small detail of how impactful a world that is only really kept together by a virtual reality world, and how the worlds affect each other and the characters of the story. Speaking of the characters in the story being affected by how the unit works, in the episode of Doctor Who called Planet of the Dead, there is a character called Dr. Malcolm Taylor, who uses his genius and technology to find a way of measuring a wormhole through a bridge to another planet. And when he's on the phone with the doctor, he mentions that he has his own little term, his own little unit for measuring the mass of space. Time.
Well, I've probably got the wrong idea, but I've wired up an integrator. I thought it could measure the energy signature.
No, that'll never work.
Extraordinary, though. I'm measuring an oscillation of 15 Malcolms per second.
15 what?
15 Malcolms. It's my own little term. A wavelength parcel of 10 kilohertz operating in 4 dimensions equals 1 Malcolm.
You named a unit of measurement after yourself.
Well, it didn't do Mr. Watt any harm. Furthermore, 100 Malcolms equals a Bernard.
He explains it well enough, and I didn't think that I could simplify any further. The great thing about these units is that they have no other reason than to just be detail that is used in the story, and this can be seen in the fact that the explanation, or even the existence of these details, does not exist in the film version of the science fiction books, and in Doctor Who, these details don't really have that big of an impact, except for being that unit, and it's just a small one-off thing, but it is these small things are what give the stories their own unique flair. Handling science is something that is expected in science fiction, and just like in other forms of media, even if they're not even semi-interesting units or details, it could change the small details of the story itself. Doctor Who acknowledges that it's something that happens even in the non-science fiction world, as after being questioned about calling a unit of measurement after himself, he says,
Well, it didn't do Mr. Watt any harm. Furthermore,
as there are so many things that go into world building, and the small details of the system of measurement is one of them, and they rarely serve to make a reader less interested in the story. If you have a pirate ninja to focus on your power on Mars,
Mark Watney, space pirate.
or you have credits to see how well the economics of the world work in Ready Player One, or how, just trying to measure a wormhole. And these small details are what make the genre and the stories in that genre just so much more interesting for the reader and or the audience of these stories.